Hello and welcome to another Pioneer video. Today I'm revisiting the Abzan Greasefang deck, which is something we've already covered in the past. I've covered pretty much every possible color pair when it comes to Greasefang decks, but it is still one of the staples of the format, and the deck keeps getting better and better. Now with the addition of Formidable Speaker as a way to tutor up Greasefang and give you a built-in discard outlet to get your vehicles in the graveyard, so we can then play Greasefang Okiba Boss, the 3-mana 4/3, saying at the beginning of combat on your turn, return target vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, and then at the beginning of the next end step we return it back to our hand, where we can often find another way to discard it, so we can get it back once more. And of course the most powerful vehicle we can get in the graveyard and reanimate with Greasefang remains Parhelion 2, an 8-mana 5/5 with flying, first strike and vigilance, and when it attacks we get to make a pair of 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance that are also attacking. So potentially on turn 3 we can be attacking for 13 in the air, and then we'll still have those 2 angel tokens left over, which will often get the job done on the following turn. So that's really the core of the deck. So then early on we want some cheap interaction and some discard outlets and ways to mill additional cards so we can fill up our graveyard nicely. At 1 mana, of course, some of the staples include Fatal Push and Thoughtseize, giving us some discard to maybe take away a removal that could otherwise remove Greasefang. In a pinch, we can also Thoughtseize ourselves to make us discard a vehicle to get it in the graveyard that way as well. Then at 2 mana, we've got a few mill effects here with Grisly Salvage. Some lists also like playing Cash Grab nowadays. That seems more important if you're playing best of 3 and maybe have some important artifacts or enchantments in the sideboard that you want to get access to. But for best of 1, Grisly Salvage seems good enough as it digs 1 card deeper, and we're mostly interested in finding the creatures and lands as opposed to the vehicles. Then we also have a one-off Overlord of the Baelmerk, which we can maybe find with Formidable Speaker, and this is also a way for us to maybe get back a Greasefang that's already in the graveyard, and hardcasting it for 5 mana also gives us a powerful late-game threat. And then another fun one-off to get in the Abzan colors is the Road Watcher, a 3/3 that when it enters, if we cast it, gets to mill 4 cards, and then we can return a creature with mana value 3 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. So another perfect way to get back a Greasefang and potentially even mill some vehicles in the process. Another one-off you can consider is Emptiness, which gives you the flexibility of evoking it for double white to maybe get Greasefang back out of the graveyard, or for double black if we want a cheap removal spell, although the double cost makes it a little difficult to play at all times, so I ended up cutting it in favor of some other cheaper interaction, but it is certainly an option. And then we've got some removal that can also double up as a discard outlet, Bitter Triumph for creatures and planeswalkers, and then Collective Brutality can give creatures -2/2, can drain the opponent for 2 against a burn deck while gaining 2 life, but can also take away instants and sorceries, so it's not a dead card against control decks, can always maybe take away a counter spell for instance. And then Professor of Symbology is the reason why we have this 15-card sideboard. Even in best of 1, we now get to run a 15-card sideboard full of lessons, because the Professor, when it enters, lets us learn. In this deck, learning often means discarding a card from our hand and then drawing a card, so we can discard our vehicles and maybe draw towards a Greasefang. But learning also means we can maybe access all these sideboard lessons, which give us a ton of flexibility, some answers to artifacts and enchantments, some ramp cards, some other removal spells, and even some late-game value engines like the Dissertation with Paradigm. So there's a ton of options to choose from. I just filled it up with as many different effects as possible, but of course these are not mandatory and the deck is totally functional without all these lessons, but it's a fun thing to think about. And then rounding out the deck, besides Formidable Speaker and Greasefang, we have our vehicles, starting with 3 copies of Esika's Chariot. Could also play the full set as a fine card to cast for 4 mana, but still pretty exciting to get back with Greasefang, as you can immediately start making additional cat tokens. And then our heavy hitters include Parhelion. The Thundering Broodwagon is also quite convenient, since you can just cycle it for 2 mana to get it in the graveyard, and then when it returns it gets to blow something up, so it gives us some additional removal as well. And then a one of Sky Sovereign can also be nice to repeatedly get back to answer various creatures or planeswalkers. And then the mana base is a mix of fast lands like Blooming Marsh and Concealed Courtyard, couple shock lands, and then Multiversal Passage can also give us a bit more mana fixing, couple basics in case we need to search them up, and then the channel lands Boseiju and Takenuma offer a bit more interaction. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play with a promising hand. Turn 1 we can push, turn 2 Triumph, discard Chariot to set up a Greasefang. And yeah, let's just keep up Fatal Push here. Nothing from our opponents. Now we can Thoughtseize, see what's up. Alright, so it is a white aggro deck. They have both Erode and Get Lost to answer Greasefang. So what do we take? Probably the Erode, which is easier for them to keep up. And then I should keep up Fatal Push here, since our opponent's likely to play the Aspirant. Could also make a case for just using the Bitter Triumph first. But now I can go tap land, pass, keep a Bitter Triumph, and hope they tap out for a creature. So now they do not have an answer lined up for Greasefang. We'll get our Chariot back. Parhelion arrives a turn late, but still seems worth going for here. And then if we draw land, we can just recast a Chariot. If for some reason they tap out for a creature, then Bitter Triumph on Parhelion should be game. Opponent maybe going for a Lieutenant after animating Mutavault. Nope, still goes for the Get Lost. So not sure what the Mutavault play was all about. Okay, so I can start by maybe exploring, see if we can hit another land. Definitely don't need the Broodwagon. Alright, opponent has seen enough. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a promising hand. Professor discards Parhelion, or we can use Collective Brutality, and then Speaker gets a Greasefang. So depending on the matchup, we can Brutality or play the Professor. Opponent with an untapped land and then an upkeep stop. We get to draw, find Greasefang. That'll save us a bit of trouble. So then I like Brutality, lose 2 and make you discard. Pitching Parhelion. Maybe take away a removal spell or a counter spell. Opponent's going to consider, so it could be a Phoenix deck. Or something similar, playing the Dawning Archaic. So take the Scheming, does enable flow state for them, but if they tap out for it, I'm happy. So that seems fine. And otherwise Scheming is a great way for them to enable the Archaic, if they can put a bunch of spells in the graveyard. So they get their flow state, but I get Greasefang on curve. Crew, attack, make some angels, and our opponent falls to 1 here. And yeah, next turn we could potentially discard Parhelion again and do it all over. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Missing black mana, unfortunately. But yeah, the upside's still pretty high. Can at least cycle the Broodwagon, and then if we find black mana by turn 3, we can Greasefang it back. So I'll try. In a pinch, we can also Thoughtseize ourselves to discard a Parhelion if we're missing a different discard outlet. Well, let's see what our opponent is up to. A Blooming Marsh, so it could be the mirror match. In which case, do I Thoughtseize them here or still go for Broodwagon? There's maybe not going to be anything for me to destroy if I get this back. So I think I prefer Thoughtseize for now. Alright, it is more of a mid-range deck instead. They do a Fatal Push, no Revolt Enabler, and then double Cub plus Sentinel. So we will have things to destroy with the Broodwagon. Could still make the case for Fatal Push if that would maybe enable Revolt if we Broodwagon and destroy one of their permanents. How would that line up? So they go turn 2 Badger Mole, turn 3 they can go Badger Mole plus Sentinel. So yeah, I think we just take a Badger Mole still. Funny that they had an Urborg in hand, which could have made blank mana for us as well. So turn 2 Badger Mole. And Formidable Speaker to draw, so now we can discard Parhelion. And then I already have a Greasefang in hand. Could still get a backup, or I could get a Road Watcher in case Greasefang ever gets removed. We can get it back. All options. I think the Road Watcher makes some amount of sense. If they Thoughtseize me here, then it doesn't matter what they take. They probably take the Road Watcher. Alright, well, Graveyard Trespasser was a very nice top deck. So now they've got Graveyard Hate. Yeah, did not see that one coming. Now the Broodwagon I can at least discard at instant speed. So then... yeah, what's our plan? Could go for Professor, and then just learn for some good lesson. And then end of turn Broodwagon on tap Greasefang. Seems reasonable. Keep it daytime. And then which lesson to get? Yeah, I could Shared Roots and cast it, which I guess also works, and then next turn I'll just go Broodwagon into Greasefang. So we get ahead of mana. Yeah, that seems reasonable to me. Could also get like the Haruna's Waterbending. Would have been more effective if they had another Badger Mole in play. And then, do I need more white mana or more black? I guess plain, since there's an Urborg making everything black. Pass a turn. So our opponent with access to 5 mana has a Professor.
Congratulations. You have a chance to impress me.
Takes out Formidable Speaker.
Gone from my presence.
And Trespasser can now attack successfully, exiling Speaker in the process. No blocks. So now the only problem, as we mentioned, is Revolt will be enabled on Fatal Push. So this could destroy the Professor, but instead I think we have to go for Trespasser and then discard Passage to the Ward ability. That way they cannot exile Greasefang after pushing it. And then next turn Road Watcher can get it back. Another Speaker could also come in handy. And then of course a Broodwagon can also attack here. Because I will get priority back before they get a chance to Fatal Push. So we get to Crew. And then it's probably worth it to finish off the Professor. And my Professor can go face. So then they can Fatal Push Greasefang. But yeah, we've got the Road Watcher, so it's not a disaster.
These are the answers I need.
Can just cycle it again next turn. Especially if we draw land and then still cast a Road Watcher. Their last unknown is a Shieldred, which is also quite powerful. Take a draw, find a Bitter Triumph. So, how do we want to proceed? Yeah, if I go for Road Watcher, get back Greasefang, there's no guarantee of a vehicle being in the graveyard. So I guess this is where having Emptiness in the list would be useful, because I could play Speaker, discard Broodwagon, and then Emptiness back Greasefang for just 2 mana. But that's a card I ended up cutting last second. So, do we have a change of plan? I mean, I can still cycle the Broodwagon if I draw an untapped land, then we're good. If not, then I'll probably just Bitter Triumph Shieldred, and we should still be okay. Alright, find the Chariots. And I think I'll keep the Speaker over the Chariots. And then now, definitely play defense. Opponent runs out to Sentinel. And goes exploring. And the Annex on top. Trade for Banter Mole. Alright, so time for Road Watcher. Get back Greasefang. Did not mill Parhelion. And then probably makes sense to go for Broodwagon. Destroy the Sentinel. And hit for 6. And then do I play the lands? I think I do, since it opens up more options with Formidable Speaker as well. Can discard whatever I draw and get another Greasefang if needed. Or of course just discard the Broodwagon. Broodwagon helps answer the Demon token or the Annex itself. But yeah, that Graveyard Trespasser kept the game interesting. Otherwise, an early Parhelion would have sealed it. Your opponent does make the Demon. Wouldn't be casting Thoughtseize. So, just cycle Broodwagon. Find Fatal Push, which can also answer one of the opponent's creatures. So, I guess we cannot destroy the Ritual Chamber. So then I'll just go for Broodwagon. Demon's the only target. Can attack for 10. Was a little bit short of playing Speaker to crew the Broodwagon that way, so we could have attacked for 13, would have been 12 at most. And then I guess it doesn't hurt to play Speaker and just keep up Fatal Push. Can get something like an Overlord. Or a Professor, which can get any lesson out of the sideboard, which can also gain life. And they can keep Urborg around for now. Our opponent unlocks the Annex. Has a Mutavault, so they can make a Demon to drain for 2 here. But we have the Fatal Push. So that's gonna take that out. And there we go. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Missing a Greasefang. Do have a salvage to try and find one. Can Bitter Triumph to discard Parhelion. So, there's enough going for us. Can Fatal Push turn 1. Although then I'll have to deal myself 4 damage. Alright, opponent with a Leyline of the Guild Pact, so I'm intrigued. Do I keep up Fatal Push? So this is likely a green Devotion deck. Yeah, I think I do. Yeah, can push the Mystic. They will no doubt present more creatures for Bitter Triumph. But may as well salvage first and see what we mill. Alright, did not find a Greasefang. Can grab a Courtyard here. And then Parhelion's in the graveyard if we top that Greasefang. And we did, so that was lucky. Well, that's the free wins you get playing Greasefang in Pioneer. Doesn't take an enormous amount of skill to get Parhelion in the graveyard on turn 2 and then get it back turn 3. And especially in best of 1, where the main deck graveyard hate is limited, there's not a whole lot our opponents can do about it. They do now have quite a bit of devotion for Nykthos. Storm the Festival can maybe still get them back into it. If they find a Cavalier, they can maybe block an Angel until we take it out with Bitter Triumph. And Karn, the Great Creator, has been banned in Pioneer for a while, so they cannot shut down the ability to crew vehicles, which used to be a thing. Alright, and there we have it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We've got both Parhelion and Greasefang. Our only discard outlet is technically Thoughtseize, targeting myself. But definitely still gonna keep. Opponent blue-red. Yeah, Thoughtseizing myself here is maybe not to play. I could wait until turn 2 to decide and then maybe cast it. Or I can just go for a Grizzly Salvage or just cycle a Broodwagon, which might be good enough. Yeah, let's just Thoughtseize my opponent, keep it simple. And double Reckless Rage, so they do have removal for Greasefang at instant speed. Unless we maybe strand them without a creature, then they won't be able to cast it. Alright, so we'll pass, and then we can decide if we want to Broodwagon or Salvage. They haven't found a creature yet. So Broodwagon would just hit for 6. So maybe we hope to dream big with a Grizzly Salvage instead. And then if we mill any other vehicle, that's maybe better. And yeah, we found Parhelion. Here I like the Professor over the Overlord. Although Overlord also makes sense on the off chance that they can still answer the Greasefang here. Sure. Professor would have been a discard outlet for the other Parhelion in hand. And yeah, opponent did not have an answer lined up and scoops it up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have a good amount of interaction, no white mana, no Greasefang. But between Salvage and Overlord, we get to dig pretty deep, and Fatal Push and Thoughtseize should keep us alive for a couple turns. So we'll try it. Opponent off with Starting Town. So let's have a look with Thoughtseize. And it's a green-white company deck. So they have the colorless mana for Eldrazi Displacer, which can also enable some fun synergies. Badger Mole, I can Fatal Push. So I think we just take the Collected Company, which is the scariest card if it comes down. So even though it's slightly off curve, I could still be convinced to Fatal Push now, before they can maybe play Protector or another company they top-decked. Alternatively, I can just ignore the Cub for a turn, and then still set up Grizzly Salvage. Yeah, I mean, Grizzly Salvage probably has the highest upside. And then next turn I can maybe Overlord plus push. It's gonna be another Badger Mole, alright. Any responses now? I can push the first one, and then they can still play a Displacer. If I let this one resolve, then they can even cast a Protector. 3/4 Flash Flying, exile any number of non-angel creatures you control until it leaves the battlefield. So it can save them from removal, basically. I still don't think I care enough, but yeah, I guess Displacer, once they start displacing Greasefang, is going to be annoying. But would not have been able to stop the opponent casting it here. So Displacer happens. Could always get lucky and both find Greasefang and mill a vehicle. Alright, and we did. Gonna be a chariot, which does a pretty good job of stabilizing the board. Now Displacer is a good answer to creature tokens, can pay 3 to essentially get rid of one. And then currently do not have another discard outlet to get a vehicle in the graveyard, but we'll see. Opponent's got multiple colorless sources, so there's no point in trying to use Boseiju to blow them up. So then Impent Overlord versus Cast Chariots is the decision here. Opponent does have their Protector available, so yeah, I think Overlord has the highest upside. Milled Parhelion, get back a Professor, and then go to combat, or I can even Professor discard another Parhelion. What's their opponent's plan? Yeah, flickering Greasefang is not going to stop me, since I can just crew with cat tokens. They can, I guess, flicker Parhelion itself before it gets a chance to attack. So I guess that's their plan here. So then maybe I'm still better off getting back the Chariots, actually, which will get immediate value. Or I can learn for an answer to the Displacer. Is Greasefang optional? It is not. Alright, opponent goes for Collected Company, so I guess they're hoping to find an answer to Greasefang. They did not, but they can still use Gathering Place to make enough mana to activate Displacer. So yeah, what's the move here? I guess I still just discard the Chariot here, so we can get that back. Because I don't want to go for Parhelion now, when we know about the Displacer. Picked up Thoughtseize. Interrupter also taxes spells cast from graveyard, but does not impact Greasefang. They might let me attack, because if they flicker Chariot I get more cat tokens. And then just a Chariot attacking, or we can get more aggressive. And then target a cat that is not attacking, which they will displace in response. They do not. So they're keeping the Displacer available. Because yeah, they could tap this for a colorless, get 2 green, and then be able to displace. So maybe they want to just displace their own creature here. And yeah, I guess Displacer plus Interrupter gives them infinite counterspells. So they could have prevented an extra cat had they displaced the token in response. Yeah, this Displacer engine is problematic, to say the least. Possible I can catch them off guard with Boseiju. Opponent's got another cub. So every Earthbound that lands now makes 4 mana. Interrupter gets in. Because yeah, now they can basically counter whatever I put on the stack and plot it. Grizzly salvage the draw. Cannot enable Revolt with Fatal Push unless we attack first. So if I can get them to maybe use Displacer 3 times and make me lose a creature, then I can maybe still Fatal Push second main, which could be the plan. If I start with Thoughtseize, maybe our opponent responds with either Flickering Interrupter or casting something from hand. Still have that one Parhelion in the graveyard. So our opponent goes for a Glorious Protector. So 4 green mana floating. Okay. So then now what I can do is channel Boseiju on the Gathering Place. Opponent flickers some stuff. Thoughtseize resolves. Take an elf. Or I can just Fatal Push on the Gathering Place. That would also work, but let's keep the Fatal Push available. Opponent's gonna flicker the Protector. If that happens. Get their stuff back. But now they do not have any colorless mana left for Displacer. They're gonna Earthbend some more. So now I get the opportunity to get back Parhelion. Okay, so move to combat. Get back Parhelion. Crew it. And get aggressive. And then we still have the Fatal Push second main to finish off the Displacer. So yeah, there was a lot happening this turn. Might have worked out better for them had they kept up the Displacer instead of playing the Angel. But they were maybe worried that we had some removal that could just target the Displacer itself. But then they would have been able to flicker the Interrupter. So yeah, this green-white deck is pretty tricky. But yeah, as it stands, they are dying to the Flyers, so they have to jump with the Interrupter. Could have also maybe cast Fatal Push before attacking, and possible we had lethal, but... it's not like we're gonna lose from this position, as we can finally Fatal Push the Displacer. Okay, so our opponent's at 1, now only with Protector and a 2/2 Hushwood Verge. Reflector Mage is a good one. Can bounce Greasefang or a token. Goes for an Angel token. And another Grizzly Salvage, so we can try to cast 2 of them, hoping to mill a vehicle, since we do not have any in the graveyard at the moment. But yeah, opponent is pretty dead here, and we get to rank up. So yeah, that was an eventful game, but also goes to show that you often only need 1 successful Greasefang trigger to get you across the finish line. And yeah, this deck has some pretty nifty tools to both find Greasefang as well as to discard the various vehicles. So it's definitely a force to be reckoned with in Pioneer. The sideboard lesson package is not going to come up all that often, but it's kind of fun to think about. And now with 15 sideboard slots available, even in Best of 1, you may as well fill it with lessons if you're just playing in Best of 1 anyway. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.